All right, Danica got her newest kit details. This new information regarding Danica's early kit comes from a solid source, and various big leakers like Lunar Team and HXG also confirms. So according to the latest details, Danica is expected to be a dedicated support character for the Stellar Conduct reaction in version 7.3. Her kit appears to be designed around supporting specific on-field Stellar Conduct characters, particularly the Sarita, although she may also work well with other characters such as Sandrone and the Traveler. As always, this is still early information, and everything can change before Danica's official beta testing and eventual release, so we'll have to wait for further updates before we can say exactly how strong she will be. First, let's talk about the characters Danica is expected to work best with. According to this information, Danica should perform better when paired with Sarita, Sandrone, or the Traveler rather than Medea. All four characters are projected to be on-field Stellar Conduct characters, so you might initially expect Danica to work equally well with all of them. However, it seems that isn't the case. Danica is not specifically designed to serve as a dedicated support for Medea. Instead, her kit appears to have been created with a particular type of Stellar Conduct team in mind, and Sarita seems to be the character receiving the most attention from her kit. This is important because Danica could potentially take over the role currently occupied by Yae Miko in Stellar Conduct teams. Yae Miko has been one of the main electro applicators and sub-DPS options for these teams, providing consistent electro application while also contributing a significant amount of off-field damage. Danica appears to be designed to fulfill a similar role, but with more specialized support for Stellar Conduct teams. In particular, she seems to be aimed primarily at Sarita teams, meaning players who plan to build the Cryo Archon as their main DPS may eventually consider Danica one of her most important teammates. That doesn't mean Danica will only work with Sarita, though. She's also expected to synergize well with Sandrone and the Traveler. Both of these characters can function as on-field Stellar Conduct damage dealers, so Danica's support abilities should still provide value to them. The main difference is simply that her kit appears to prioritize Sarita more heavily. This is actually a fairly common design direction for specialized supports. Rather than creating a character who is equally optimal for every possible team, Hoyoverse can design a support around a specific character or reaction archetype while still allowing them to function in other compositions. One of Danica's most important abilities is expected to be her resistance reduction. She can reportedly lower the cryo and electro resistance of nearby opponents, which would be extremely valuable in Stellar Conduct teams, because both cryo and electro damage are important parts of the reaction. The current information suggests that this effect will most likely activate whenever either Danica herself or one of her teammates triggers the Stellar Conduct. If that remains true, it should be relatively easy to maintain during a normal rotation, especially in a team with consistent elemental application. This resistance reduction could be one of the reasons Danica becomes so valuable for Charita teams. Charita is expected to be a cryo main DPS, so reducing cryo resistance would directly increase her personal damage. At the same time, Danica herself provides electro application, allowing the team to consistently trigger Stellar Conduct. The combination of reaction support, electro application, and cryo resistance reduction makes Danica a natural partner for a cryo-centered Stellar Conduct team. Moving on to her weapon type, Danica is currently expected to use a claymore. This is actually quite convenient because Snezhnaya is introducing a new craftable claymore called Blade of Atonement. The weapon has a high attack stat and also provides a useful passive effect that fits perfectly with Danica's role. At Refinement 1, Blade of Atonement reportedly increases the wielder's elemental mastery by 60 and increases the stellar glimmer reaction damage of all teammates by 14%. For a support character whose main purpose is helping Stellar Conduct teams, this could be an excellent free-to-play option. You won't necessarily need to rely on a limited 5-star weapon to make Danica useful. A craftable weapon that provides both elemental mastery and a team-wide stellar reaction damage bonus could give her exactly the stats and utility she needs. The elemental mastery can improve the relevant reaction-related mechanics, while the team-wide damage increase helps Danica contribute even when she's not the character actively dealing damage. Of course, we still need to see how Danica's own scaling works before deciding whether Blade of Atonement will actually be her best free-to-play option. The current information only gives us an early look at the weapon and her role, so the final version could have different stat requirements. But if her current design remains intact, having access to a craftable claymore specifically suited to stellar reaction teams is definitely a nice advantage for players who don't want to spend additional primo gems on her weapon. Now let's talk about her expected team composition. Danica's current best team is expected to feature Sarita as the main DPS, Odette as the buffer, and Alosha as the healer and additional buffer. This makes a lot of sense based on the roles we've heard from each character. Sarita stays on the field and focuses on dealing the majority of the team's damage, while Danica provides electro application, resistance reduction, and stellar conduct support. Odette can provide additional buffs for the reaction-based team, while Alosha provides healing and additional support. If you don't have Sarita, you can potentially replace her with Sandrone or the Cryo Traveler. Both characters are expected to function as on-field Stellar Conduct DPS characters, meaning Danica's support abilities should still be useful with them. This gives players some flexibility when building a team, and means you don't necessarily have to wait for Sarita to make use of Danica. But does all of this mean that Yai Miko is going to be completely replaced? Not necessarily. Yai Miko can still be used alongside Danica, although you'll need to adjust the rest of the team. One possible option is to replace Alosha with Yai Miko. This would allow you to run both Danica and Yai Miko as electro-focused characters, while keeping the rest of the Stellar Conduct setup intact. Danica is also believed to possess survivability skills. The same applies to Medea. Even though Danica isn't specifically designed as a dedicated support for him, that doesn't mean the two characters can't be used together. Medea can still function as either the on-field DPS for Danica's team, or as a secondary electro enabler. This is particularly useful because Medea is expected to have a dual role, allowing him to contribute both on the field and from the background. Because of that flexibility, adding Medea to a Danica team shouldn't significantly compromise her overall performance. In fact, Medea's ability to switch between on-field and off-field damage could make team building with Danica more flexible than it initially appears. If another character is already occupying the main DPS position, Medea can potentially contribute from the background. Overall, Danica is shaping up to be a very specialized Stellar Conduct support. Her ability to provide electro application, reduce cryo and electro resistance, and increase stellar-related reaction performance makes her particularly valuable for teams centered around cryo DPS characters. Sarita appears to be her main intended partner, but Sandrone and the Cryo Traveler can also take advantage of her support abilities. Of course, this is all based on early information from a reliable source, so we should expect changes before Danica's final release. So, are you guys planning to pull for Danica? If you're already saving for Sarita, she might be a character worth keeping an eye on, especially if you want to build the strongest possible Stellar Conduct team around the Cryo Archon. That's all for today. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!